Welcome back to the Near Future podcast. Jonny is deep in house moving, so it's just me and this week's special guest. Today we have Ini Abiodun, who's a lead product designer at AirOps. And Ini is one of the most inventive designer builders that we know. She joined AirOps a few months ago, so we wanted to hear what she's been making there and why, and what it's like building as a designer inside a fast-moving AI company. Also today we're hoping to chat through and learn more about Palmwine Radio, which is a beautiful 1950s style radio that she built that lives online and broadcasts Nigerian instrumentals across 6 decades of music. So super cool project. Looking forward to hearing more about that. But just to get us started, Ini, welcome to the podcast.
Hi,
Great to have you here.
thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So let's start off with a bit about AirOps. So you joined a few months ago there. How have your first few months been?
It's been actually really fun in terms of just the speed. Like I came in deliberately, I was structured with a fluid enough 90-day plan, right? So you come into a new role, you already have a plan about how to onboard yourself, especially going into a startup and things like that. So the whole plan around, month one, earn trust with speed as quickly as possible, just ship things. And then no opinions yet about processes. Maybe start to contribute gradually by month 2, find the different ways in which you can bring in structure. Month 3, have a claim and figure out how you can get a 6-month plan, whatever the case. Yeah, it's always nice to dream very idealistically like that. All of that was dead by day 2 or 3. And it was not because it was wrong, but it's just like it's moved incredibly, incredibly fast at an AI startup in particular. I mean, I was coming from an AI native company, but I think it was like getting used to just the speed of their nimbleness. I think that was the difference of it. And I planned obviously for, okay, yes, we're going into an AI native company, but I was still coming with my preconceived notions of what processes look like and just learning very much like between the speed with which capabilities change within AI itself, as well as just having access to being able to move very quickly. Obviously, things that you design within like yesterday afternoon could very well be different in terms of the usage by today. And that also means like the roadmap remains ever so fluid and things like that. So anyway, in terms of settling in, it's been great and very interesting for sure to go at networking speed.
Interesting. Is there anything on that day 2 where you tore up and rebuilt your 90-day plan? Is there any specific examples of things that you feel are unique to a company that is operating in this very AI native startup environment?
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, there are a bunch of examples. I think the first one was having access to Fantino. I've shared about this on my LinkedIn before. Our internal open core that is about access. It was built by the engineering team with access to all of the engineering processes and just like the ways of working, and also wired up to like our data points, data ends and tools. And I think by day 2 was me realizing very quickly that one, I had a wealth of knowledge at my fingertips that I did not realize before that I could access. And so this supposed 90-day plan would simply needed to evolve very quickly because now there is far greater information for me to go at incredible speed compared to what a typical 90-day plan would do. And so step 1 was really just talking to Fantino to understand. I now have access to something where I can understand the code base. And obviously as a designer, I was getting Fantino to lay out, like draw mountains of mermaids to help me really understand like the code base, the data structures, the models, the schema, and all of those things. And then we also have Clara. There's a bunch of them around around in Slack. We also have Clara that is more like sales and go-to-market side of things. And so onboarding looked very differently, basically, which was like, oh gosh, I have so much information. I needed to really rethink, not like the 90-day plan did not exist still, but it was just like, there is no pace in the way I thought about pacing. It was just not going to work. I had more information and I needed to figure out how to begin to understand and take all that information in. And then also, which meant my contribution was fast tracked because then, it's like, you spend 1 month doing like a listening tour, all of this. I mean, I still did that. I did a listening tour. It was like 35 phone calls within my first week. That was my listening tour. And something that would have taken literally a month took like a week or 2. I think I shipped I shipped my first PR by week 2. By day 2, I'd created like a skill for our content, wasn't like our UX writing, because that was one thing that I very quickly identified was sorely lacking. And so it was like, okay, for me to get anything done, we needed this. So it's mostly just like reaching out to the brand team, understanding from a marketing perspective, like our ways of talking, our tone of voice, and all of those things, and then starting to encode that, going back and forth with Fantino and Clara to identify like, all right, where are we struggling within product? Where are the opportunities where a solid product copy could really help us improve? And then starting to figure out how that feeds into a skill, which I'm very glad with the adoption rate of that skill today. It's something that's quite nicely and widely used. So yeah.
Lovely. And who is using that? Is that just the designers or
Yeah.
PMs or who?
Yes. So PMs are using it. And then there is the engineering team. My manager was at VP of products, has commented nicely that it's very helpful. Yeah. So yeah, it's basically a bunch of folks from across the PD org. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, there's something about writing that feels very important as a sort of equalizing force across so many parts of a product org. I think is something that, especially in many small companies, designers maybe are the ones who are most likely to feel the pain of poor writing. But I think it's very universally understood. And I think in this AI era, it's also very easy to overcook it or get it wrong.
Yes.
Do you have any takeaways from your experience building that could be relevant or could help in future?
Yes. No, totally. I think, first of all, like the one thing we know about language models in general, large language models, is how verbose they are in terms of outputs. And we are all feeling the cognitive overload of having to read walls and walls of text that AI generates. And I think, so typically most people lean into using LLMs for product copywriting, which is a good first step. But once again, you're dealing with, first, there is a lot of context and intent that's missing from like just saying, oh yeah, draft me this is what I'm trying to say. There are things around the surface area, understanding what's the right mechanism to use at different points. So yeah, so it becomes very easy for you to just use, say for example, oh, I'm trying to write and okay, I think there are 2 versions of this, because I wanted this to be used beyond just designers. Able to imbue the skill with the right technical term was important, but in a way that it can pick up or prompt whoever is using it to be able to gain enough information about the surface area that they are working on. So folks who are not technical or are not familiar with design technical terms will just talk about like, hey, I want to write this into a tooltip. But then it's like, okay, no, the right way to start for designers, which I did run designers through, is like, you want to write a tooltip for a run button within the workflow editor. So that sort of covers the different, like your task, the particular component, the surface area where that component goes, and then the job that is to be done basically by the user and this kind of thing. So like I said, starting with the brand voice was important. So yeah, who are we? What are the principles? We're experts, we're optimistic, we're inspired, all of those things. But then I brought in the product's mental model. So we know that 3 broad areas anchor everything AirOps, which is like we've got the context layer that's got all the things around, like a product's foundation, our brand kits, the knowledge bases, things like that. They've got actions, which is where we've got like workflows, agents, playbooks, and a bunch of different things. And then you've got the insights layer, which is like our analytics on how AI search performance is going. Now, depending on each of these surface areas, the copy has to be very different. It's not the same way of writing across these things. So for insights, for example, it has to be like data first, diagnostic, and oriented towards what has changed and what do I do next, right? And so I also then brought in the tone based on the surface area. So you've got like functional, data-driven, depending on certain components, when it should be empowering. So for example, is an upgrade prompt, a success moment, an onboarding milestone, a feature announcement. When it should be collaborative, is it a supporting copy, onboarding sequence, in product help surfaces? Is it aspirational? But like even aspirational stuff, it's rarely in products. So you reserve for that major upgrade moments. And then witty and clever, which we oftentimes will find in our AI agent quill. So it's those type of things. And then also then bringing in like the terminologies that are used commonly. So like AEO, content engineering, brand kits, like things that are specific to AirOps and the way we talk in a way that helps not just the person who is using the skill, but like the output to our customer. They feel enabled and empowered to actually do this properly. So yeah, those were some of like the structure. And then you've got the general rules around, okay, you have to always use like American English. There's like sentence case everywhere. Contractions are encouraged. So you can say it has things like that. And then don't use like periods and headings or buttons. Like so general content design rules as well. So yeah, that was sort of like the structure. And then when you're using it, I think it's like, first of all, it prompts you by asking you for like what surface and what the user is doing when they see this and which product pillar. And then it diagnoses what is wrong with the existing copy that you brought with it so that people also start to learn. So it's not just like, oh, okay, here is the copy you should know. Like, here is what was wrong with the way you wanted to say it at first. And people start to learn. And then the final phase is like it rewrites and then explains why the changes have been made and also invites the user to understand, or if there's anything they want to tweak. So, yeah.
Super cool. And it feels like a really good chunk or slice of the sort of ways of working to carve off to get started with. And I remember talking to you a few months ago now, I think it was, and you were saying how joining a startup going through this phase, there is a lot of opportunities for introducing ways of working or scaling design across the organization. How much of your time do you find you're spending on traditional product design problems of uncovering needs and then solving those for end customers or end users versus these more operations style ways of working that is about scaling design judgment across the team?
That's a very good question. I think for the scaling part, I feel like I am spending more time there actually than okay, that's actually hard to answer. I'm realizing as I say out loud. I would say it depends. Let's put it that way. It depends. Oh, a typical product design answer. On one part of it, there are moments that, yes, I'm leaning more into the traditional product design, of which I feel like product design has also evolved so much, like the whole talking to users. And also the nature in which we talk to users, it's more like we have a lot of our users who are in Slack, that kind of thing. So it's more hopping into Slack channels to actually troubleshoot almost immediately as they're reporting things. And then you can hop on a call to sort of go through that. So like the process of, how it'd be like, oh yeah, we've got something to prototype. Let's get your feedback on that. That doesn't really happen because feedback is almost instant and you can, so there's a lot of it that actually now relies on, I've been talking in conversations with these users anyway. So I can almost always grab them as opposed to, all right, we've gone through this arc and now we want to user tests, that sort of thing. And so, the operational part is a whole lot more. I think this one, I don't know if it is general to AI, like the changes we're seeing, or if this is more just like in AirOps' instance, where it's like, okay, there's a lot of like education that I'm finding that I'm doing in terms of what design's role and function can be if people really understand how design can be a partner. But I suppose I'm also introspective enough to realize that it's a give and a take, right? And I'm hoping it's something that I can help other teammates also like move along with, because our success is all interdependent. So I find it fascinating when I see discourse online around how design is relegated to XYZ. I'm not disputing that, by the way. I think that's a far-reaching problem. AI has made anyone feel like whatever output they generate is pretty senior enough for it to pass for good design, until someone with actual experience looks at it and you see all the ways in which it falls apart. But because of that, many people do feel like, oh yeah, what do I need designers for? But there is also a flip side of it that I've come to say, like, yeah, I could lean into that as like, oh my God, why is like, this is what's happening and I'm not enjoying it. Or I could also spend a bit more time putting on my great designer hat, putting on that business thinking side of things, and really realizing that my function is to and best chance, so to speak, of getting them to really understand what I can do is really then digging into what are the things that make them tick. So it's like sage knowledge, honestly, and sage wisdom. How do you help your partners thrive? How do you help your stakeholders succeed within their tasks? And that also then elevates as a result, the way they view my function and my job. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Do you have any specific examples of what that looks like? And is there any way you're able to do that through design output, or is it more about you were talking a bit about business there and enabling other disciplines? Are you making that change happen through the design output itself, or more the ways of working with those other disciplines to get more alignment or buy-in or support earlier on?
I think it's a bit of both, actually. So a very good example would be, so when I joined, we had this whole thing around a push for craft. Like, how do we elevate the product? And we'd gone through this rebrand in December or October when the Series B was raised before I joined the company. But then by the time I joined, the product was looking very much older compared to the rebrand. And it was playing catch up. And it was easy to feel like, I think there was language where, oh, come fix this UI, come and sort this. Or like, it's just like, it's in the phrasing of things that you pick it up very quickly, where someone's like, oh, can I get your thoughts on the UI UX of this thing? And for some reason, that hurts my nose so bad. And because it's just like, you can see how the reduction of all that you do is simply in what the UI output is like. And so step one for me was, how do I help elevate their way of seeing the work that I do and see me as a thinking partner? And so part of that was the push for encouraging PDE to come together for like a weekly planning. It was something that happened without the D function within the PDE. So it was only the products and the engineer manager, those kind of things. So step one was like, all right, getting into the right meetings, identifying the right meetings, identifying the right stakeholders and having those conversations. Step two was getting familiar with our AI engineers to begin to like ask questions. I do this as a method a lot, like just come with a ton of questions that make people feel very comfortable and relaxed talking about their area of working. And then I flip it gradually by introducing the parallels in our thinking, but also then bring in, oh, here is how I can help with that. So a very good example is like we had been going through a lot of evals in terms of like really tuning the language models to get them to work and things like that. And that is work that I was not even invited to or included in at all. But it was work I was very interested in because I was seeing the output of the models and saying, this makes no sense, right? And it's not because it's oh, this doesn't make sense. Like, what are you doing? You're not doing your job. No, that was not it. It was more just from a user's perspective, this is a lot of cognitive load that we're placing on our users to be able to parse this information. Now, as a designer, my job was to stop and create some sort of framework that our engineers would understand about guiding or turning into a skill for the agent to reach for every time as a guiding process to be able to churn out whatever output is given to users. And so for me, that was it. It was by being in those conversations and just hopping onto Slack chats that nobody invited me into. But I'm like, yeah, I see you. How about we try it with this method and this step, like try this 3-step framework, give it to the agents, do the outcomes. Can you share the outcomes here? And we can go back and forth. When you offer to help in that way, it becomes so, and you do that consistently enough, now they reach and say, hey, by the way, can I pull you in for XYZ? I'd like to chat to you about this. So that's sort of how I think about it.
So the very human relationship building task of empathy applied to your peers, cross-functional peers. Basically. Is there any way, is there any AI tricks or tips you've used in that process? It sounds very, very human and labor intensive, in a good way, in an important way. But yeah, has AI given any ways of making that easier?
Yes. Well, I would say yes, but because it was still very human driven to be able to get the AI to parse things. And so I still figure out how to apply it. But yeah, this goes to the article that I had previously mentioned to you about, like, that I was writing, and fingers crossed you share really soon, about just being a neurospicy designer and working within an industry where the people relationship matters a lot. This is, yes. But I think a lesser known fact about me, and also something I've recently like been diagnosed and realized about myself, was the ADHD and the autism part. And I think that a lot of things that make sense. One, which is like, one, the pattern recognition of how, like, just being able to look at a system and see all the different ways in which things were not connecting together that might not be immediately obvious to other people. And then the other part that was harder was the communication of the things that I see, because it's like, it's just incredibly frustrating by default. It's like, why can you not see all of these missing pieces? You should see it. But then being able to, like, then step back and realize, okay, I was not as equipped on the communications part as I wanted to be. And so I began to study the works of incredible communicators like Westcale, right? For example. Now, here is the part that I did for me, and me only. So it's not something that I share. So I think that's the only way. I think I'm not quite sure how okay it is, but I needed that help. Now, step one, I read all of our articles, and I mean all of Wesley's writing completely across the internet. I began to create or dub like frameworks from all the things that she'd created. And so I created my own sort of base of those frameworks in a way that I can easily reference as I'm talking. So yeah, we are probably all familiar with the concept of like the knowledge bases. Andre Karpathy talks about it. And the person who actually introduced me to it, to using Obsidian for that, was Domingo Wyden. I watched his entire setup and process, and I thought, this is fantastic. Like, having to reach like something that you can easily reach for was mind blowing to me. And so where I went one step further, perhaps from what he had shown me, was I wanted this to be some sort of like intelligence. Like, it's like a work OS for me, beyond just, oh, here's how I start my day, here's how I conclude my day. Here's, now that the systems are connected, you've got access to Notion, you've got access to granola and things like that. I wanted to be able to always reach for in the moment context where I can chat with the agent and load the skills that I've created of communication frameworks and patterns to be able to understand what the right steps or possible steps to apply to different scenarios. So I think that's the step. That's like creating an external nervous system is how I think about it, because comms really jacked up my nerves like to an incredible degree. And just sometimes I would just clam up in the middle of a conversation because I'm just really nervous about talking to people about things. And so being able to have something accessible meant I could then really stay with my thoughts, rationalize it, consider it from different perspectives before I go have a conversation with people in a way that then feels more humane and human to them. And I reckon the last part I'll say on this is like, on the flip side, one of the great things about being neurospicy is something that we call mirroring, where I didn't realize for years it was something I even did naturally. But spend enough time with a person, there's certain things that I can mirror up to perfection, near perfection, ways in which they're comfortable being approached without realizing it. And so now that I realize this, it's like, oh, this is very useful at work, because then you know that when you're speaking to marketing, obviously leaning into marketing terms and leaning into marketing speak makes them at ease to understand them, but also communicate what you're trying to get across. When it comes to products, it's different. When it comes to engineering, it's different. And so bringing mirroring to work is a lot of work on my part, but it's a work I'm joyful doing. Makes me happy.
Yeah. So, well, there's a lot that you covered there, but it sounds really interesting. The point about the using or creating this knowledge base to help sharpen your thinking, is that a correct way of interpreting it? It's sort of crafting or sharpening your sort of thought process around the conversations that you're looking to have with people. I'm curious if that is, do you use that regularly? Is that part of your day to day? And is that purely something that is the examples you gave with Cal's writing and exceptional guidance there, is it a static guide in a sense? How much does it incorporate the person who you're looking to speak to and the context around that conversation already versus this more communication clarity tool, which it sounds like for the most part?
So yes, it's almost alive in a very creepy way because so what I've also done, we all do like the stakeholders mapping, right? We're familiar with that. I've now taken it one step further with the stakeholders mapping because once again, we've got access to granola and things like that. Because I'm constantly evaluating how I show up in meetings, how I answer questions, those are things that I've been burned with in the past, right? As a result of that, my stakeholders mapping then looks like my interactions with certain people. And then it's starting to become like sort of like intelligence about our relationship with these people, right? And so I can almost like query it. I used to do this by hand anyway, but now it just lives in a tool where there are connections that I would not even make myself. And now I can see those light up. Right. And I think another thing that's like helpful where that's concerned is beyond West, I also have, Lenny released his entire stuff as a markdown. That is a wealth of knowledge by itself as well. So that's also part of, I call it the oracle. So I just / oracle and it already knows that when I'm using the oracle, it can pull from my personal interactions with certain stakeholders. So things are in context when I bring trying to understand, all right, the right way to guide a certain conversation. So say, for example, I'm talking to my manager and we're, for example, right now, what we're having conversations around and growth and what possible pathways my career could evolve within the organization. Those type of things. One is like I evaluate where I'm at compared to like personal quarterly goals that I've set within the org. And then what are things that brand conversations matter to my manager. There are connections that will obviously I'm able to make. And there are those that are surprisingly just genius that I'm now finding like Claude is able to make those connections for me because this thing it's more connected and more alive than I could imagine it to be. So.
Got it. Wow. There's a lot there. And so it sounds like you're primarily using that in Claude. Is that part of do you have any sort of rituals around that? Is it a weekly thing or a daily thing, or is it just ahead of meetings?
Yes. I'm going to pause real quick and charge my computer. 2 seconds. Okay. We unfolded. All right. Yeah. So I have both daily and weekly routines around this. Today, I think this is the part that I would love to automate still because it feels very manual, but I still recognize like I put certain like guardrails in the process that forces me to stop and think. So it's not Claude has gone and just synthesized without me. Right. So I / check in to start my day. And I can't remember last time I logged into my email, for example. All of those contexts get pulled into Obsidian about what my daily briefing is, what today is, and things like that. And then from there, it's able to then capture. I have an ADHD specific skill where it's like, if the day is starting to look like super busy and meetings back to back, auto identify based on context my top important deliverables that I have committed to in conversations that I did not realize, not the top 3 that I've written down and said these are my goals for the day. No, conversations I've had and said, oh, I'll get that to you. I will get that to you. All right, I'll work on this. But like they're often open-ended intentionally where I've not put a set date to it. But from the perspective of my partners and stakeholders, it is something that ties to their deliveries, which is why I need that pull and remind me of that. And just say, all right, this person's waiting for this and there's a timeline for them. So that also gets surfaced in my morning briefing. So that way I can then reprioritize my day to say, all right, what's the most urgent of all of these requests? And I think what's incredible here as well is when you're a designer in a small startup, when you've got a whole lot more partners, we've got engineers, work is, that whole thing where they say design is starting to become the bottleneck. It's very real, right? And so work moves very quickly. My goal within the first couple of weeks of being here was how do I enable and empower my engineers to actually ship without me creating the UI all the time? So it's more, I now run design reviews for my engineers where they're able to go like use the design system, come up with the components, and then we come together and I can sort of point out, all right, here's what's missing from that thinking. Here's how we might want to do that. And so those design reviews are low stakes enough for me that I don't have to like by delegating that way, I don't spread myself too thin because there's so many surface areas to cover. And so those kind of things also get filtered into my like, okay, take the time to review this loom from this person. This thing needs to shape all of those details. And then it also pulls like PRs about all the different things that I care about. So I can, and then gives me like just headline of what's going on across each PR and what may start to look like it would need my attention. Okay, so that's like the daily one. And then at the end of the week, and end of day, I also synthesize my day and sort of prep for what will be top of mind. And then I capture two things extra. One is how I'm feeling, in general. I like to get that daily reflection going. And then two, what would be like the most useful thing that I've done that day that could start to feed my performance documentation? Because the one thing I don't want to do in a fast moving organization is continuously start to keep track of, oh, hey, my wins here. If I have to do that manually, a lot of things will fall by the way. So this way I have a much more cohesive time to think when it's time for 360s. I can see, oh, here are areas I thought I was doing great in, but clearly I was dropping the ball and things like that. And then at the end of the week, it's not just synthesizing the whole week to then understand, all right, these are things that should be priority next week. These are things I can drop. And then I also need to clean the knowledge base to make sure like petty information doesn't start clogging up the system. So.
Love that. Love that. I have a very similar process actually, which is kind of interesting how that translates across different environments. But yeah, my own process will start with an automated scheduled task early in the morning so that there's a markdown file waiting for me when I start my day. I'll do a daily reflection at the end of it and a weekly reflection on a Friday or a Monday to sort of reflect on, process all the things that have happened this week, what's giving me energy, where I'm excited about. So sounds like that is something you talked about exactly the same thing, and I've heard a few other people doing it. So I wonder if that is a new emergent self-reflection practice as part of this era. Yeah. But I totally agree with you that it massively helps in helping you zoom out or capture the day-to-day details, but giving you that context to zoom out later on when you need to. And whether it's a review cycle or I do not have a review cycle, but I am sort of trying to hold myself accountable for zooming out and sort of seeing the bigger picture every now and then.
Yeah. Can I ask why you use a markdown file, not like generating fun HTML to look at?
Yeah, I use it because all of my personal context and knowledge is basically in markdown files that are in IA Writer. I use.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is mostly because my daily practice for a long time, before AI even, was to create a daily scratch pad, like a blank file, text file, and I just use that to keep a running note of like, here's what I need to get done today. Here's a sort of draft Slack message I need to send. It was this sort of very messy single page, and then I would finish at the end of the day and start my next one, and all that stuff kind of went in the bin. But now it's sort of creating this sort of context exhaust that happens through the way of working that can be useful later on. So that's why it's all a markdown. But it's funny you should say that, because just yesterday I was wondering about like, maybe I should start making some of this HTML, because I think there is the back and forth and the sort of interactivity that you can start to get when there is a bit of light feedback, and especially when you're bringing this sort of systems thinking approach of how do you not just surface content or context, but help find intuitive ways to train the model around your context in a way that feels very natural and intuitive to you, but without needing to be this explicit task that like, okay, now I'm going to train the model over here and now I'm going to review the contents of it. If you can kind of integrate that into the same flow, that feels a lot more intuitive. Do you use HTML? Do you use, what's your format of choice?
I do. I use both actually. So a lot of the things that go into Obsidian, they're markdown files. However, the things like daily briefing, I prefer for it to like generate as a HTML file and just, but I find it most useful actually when I'm learning something. So part of things in my knowledge base is like, I think I saw it this year, really trying to pushing to applied AI and machine learning as my personal curriculum for the year. And so because Claude is already very familiar with how I prefer to learn, it was just easy to then prompt it like all of the things that we're going to do, don't just send it to me as like walls of text. That's too much. It needs to be interactive and fun. So generating HTML versions of whatever my topic for the day is. And then the tests happen as I can click into it. It can auto show me what's right about my answer, the gaps in my thinking. Yeah, I found that to be very useful, the learning part, and also just like a nice newspaper-like thing, like here's your daily brief kind of thing. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yep, super cool. Ini, let's switch gears. We've talked about AirOps. We've talked about your role there, a lot of your sort of operating system for how you get things done as well, and the knowledge graph and how that helps scale and guide your thinking. Would love to talk about Palmwine Radio or Palmwine Wireless, which is this incredible side project that you built recently, which is, well, could you describe it to us or maybe even show it to us? What is Palmwine Wireless?
Oh, all right. Let's talk to, welcome to the fun side. So Palmwine Wireless is this idea. Well, it started, first of all, about the idea, where it came from. It was like a lot of nostalgia. I would say is the one word that describes it. There's a whole lot of home in this project for me. And I will share my screen as I start to talk through this. Okay, great. Just waiting on it. Wonderful. Perfect. So I wanted to make something joyful that one reminded me of him a lot. There are two ways in which, two things that mean home to me: food and music, right? And so for me, I'm not much of a cook. Well, no, that's actually not correct. I am a really good cook, but I don't enjoy the process of cooking. And so music was obviously the most tangible thing to go on. And my brother was visiting recently and we were just like chit-chatting. We looked at time. It was like, oh my God, we've been talking to like 3 a.m. Oh my God, it's been such a long time since we've done this. Do you remember when we used to do this all the time at home? We'd be like up late and just sort of sitting on like a veranda is what we call like porches back home. And just, yeah, old Nigerian music. I just wanted to build that. And he was like, yeah, that's such a good idea. I'm like, okay, great. Let's do this. I want something much more permanent that I could dig into. And so I started first from like, I realized a lot of the music I was reaching for was from like the 80s and the 70s. And it just clicked from there, like, wait, hang on. What if I explored an entire era of music, but beyond just it being the music, is there a way for me to bring this to life in something that is fun and interactive for other people? And so step one was I actually created this radio and it was in 2D format. So no world, nothing yet, pure 2D. And for this one, I did not start in Figma at all. I started directly in Code. I was just talking to Claude and I brain dumped everything that I wanted in terms of the look and feel. I was like, oh, is there, if teenage engineering existed in the 50s, what would it look like? That was the first prompt. And then Fable, Fable sort of created a 2D version. I was like, oh my God, this is good. So I started from tweaking this 2D version, like, well, this is the 3D one now. But I started from the 2D version and like, I want to be able to move I didn't realize the music will come up. But I wanted to move the dial. I wanted to be able to change the tone. I wanted to toggle the power on and off. I wanted it to be interactive. If you click on the glass, the radio powers on. Like so many different bits, right? So when this started to work in 2D, I thought, whoa, this is really good. Now, all of this was working without the music because the music itself was a 2-month journey of really researching Nigerian music, going through from like the 50s all the way to the early 2000s. I started from a particular genre we call high life, where it was just very, very upbeat. And there are different versions of it. There's ones that used to serenade people. There are ones that used to think about lost loves. There's one that's just like thinking about enjoying life in general. And so I began to research the arc of like different artists of the time, obviously popular one being Fela. So I started first from Fela's music, and then I thought, you know what? I don't want people to be able to like zoom in on a particular music and listen to just that one track over and over. I wanted it to feel like a radio experience where you don't know what's coming up next. And so that's what this was. I explored that and began to load the radio with this. So it was like 2 months of listening to music, collecting and creating the prompts, eventually using Suno to generate all of that. And then now I think I had like 90 something different tracks. And then I whittled them down to 63 that finally made the cut into this. After making the cut, next step was we really need to do some world building because this 2D was not working for me. So step one was the earliest memory I had was the bar beach. And the reason for that memory was like I was supposed to go on a school trip with my class, and my dad said no. So I couldn't make that trip. And I eventually, eventually thought, you know what would it have been that day? Because obviously people came back with all their stories. So I tried to imagine what bar beach, obviously devoid of the people. And like, it's not true one-to-one in terms of the bar beach, but the idea was, what is the feeling? The goal here was capturing the feeling and being able to see the water, being able to look at the palm trees and things like that. And obviously, what is the point of it if you do not explore the time of day, right? And I think this is where all the textures began to come in for me. Like, no, that lamp does not look right. It has to be true Nigerian lanterns, the hurricane type of lanterns. And then when you're looking at the beach, what does the sun look like? What does it feel like? And yeah, just really capturing the vibrant colors. And when does the lights come on? Like, is it 7:30 that the lanterns switch on? What is the right time? And then going to the shack as well. Like, you got a proper calabash, you've got proper bottles, you've got light, you can see the whole vibe. And I think I was like, okay, I am ready for the biggest part of this, which is the rain veranda. And this one was like, I wanted to capture that feeling with my brother, with my siblings, just sitting outside, listening to the rain and having this music playing in the background and us just chatting the night away. And I even brought in, there was always one light that's really in the compound. And I managed to get Fable to really hone in on that detail. And it's just things like how the way the thunder is, it's very, very different from the way rain sounds in the West. So getting the right assets. Oh my God, when Fable was able to source the right rain assets, like the sound of rain on corrugated iron sheets, that was the best feeling. I was like, oh my God, this sounds exactly like home. This is incredible. And also just like being true to the kind of trees that actually grew in the property. And you can see like things like a piece of tire there. There's like just little details from home, and like the poplar tree and then the bougainvillea in the background, and just really being able to like showcase all of these fine details. It was an absolute pleasure.
This is such a great project, and I hadn't even really considered the level of detail that you're just explaining there, but so many questions about that. Maybe to start with just the specific thing you mentioned there of the sound of rain on a tin roof in Nigeria. How did you prompt it to get that specific a sound?
Okay, I will go one quick route on this, because this is another little update I made to my site that I'm not sure if few people have discovered it, but I'm intentionally leaving it for people who are truly exploratory. So before the wireless radio started, I created this view. So if you notice, like, this is a much more zoomed out view of that living area, like the studio that you've just seen. But then what I began to do was play with this idea of like shaders on it. So I'm not sure how many people might have explored this. Now, when I was playing with this, I played with shaders, paper, and then rain. And this was the first attempt at getting Fable to get to the point of rain. So for this, I would turn on sound, off and on sound, like the room sound, so you can hear. The sound in rain is very Western. It's a dull, it's slightly dulled, and it's more of a stream, right? And I just like, okay, this feels like right now what rain is the experience of rain right now. And I think for this one, what was it? Was like you could also see across different modes of lighting. So it's more spaced out now. And then the rain is starting to like get together, like you get more rain, and then finally in ambient mode, it is full on storm. Right. And so playing around with that sound, I'm like, no, this is too far away. Rain on tea roof is very different and very harsh and sharp. And so by the time I done, and by the way, this was like 2 weeks, nearly 2 weeks of getting this rain feeling like sharp and really good on my personal side. So by the time I came to this, first of all, the look and feel of the rain needed to be different. I'm glad we got a steady stream of rain. What was incredible here about then was like, all right, I started from the corrugated sheets, asking it to source different sounds. Could we build the sound ourselves? Right. So I brought in my 11 Labs API key and started prompting with Fable, trying to get to it, and nothing was working. It all sounded too synthetic. I'm like, surely rain in West Africa or in Africa generally can be on the internet as a CCO. So I sent Fable and like, okay, it has to be corrugated sheets. It has to be tropical rain sounds. Figure out how that comes together and do not stop until you find something reasonable. Come back with a couple of options. And so, yes, I was very, very happy. I don't know if you heard that, but
I don't think we're getting any audio from the computer coming through.
Okay, nice. All right. I will encourage people to go compare in contrast those two sounds. But yeah, it's utterly different. Like you can hear it actually hitting the corrugated sheets. You can hear the slight intermission between it and when the thunder happens and things like that. And so, yeah.
Amazing. So just to recap your sound process there, it was Fable was creating it. You mentioned 11 Labs as well. Was this Fable creating it through 11 Labs or it was purely in Fable? Okay.
I tried in Fable. It was the most synthetic nonsense I'd ever heard. That doesn't even sound like rain. And then I gave it my 11 Labs API key to experiment with, and it would like create the scene, and I'll test it out and realize no, that's still not it. Yeah.
Cool. Amazing. And how long did this take? This was a huge project.
It took like 4 days of intense building. Oh, and the parts that I actually did not see it was like, so you've got a DJ. Now, this is where I went a bit mental, where I thought, you know what? You know how the radio shows, you would have someone talking to you all the time. I basically started recording 11 p.m. So I hopped onto Apple Voice Memo and just talked to it and did not finish until like 6 a.m. I'd record and recorded about 80 snippets. And also just tagging everything with the right data tags so that the system can recognize where to put it in between the radio stations. And it did. And I hated it. And but it was very frustrating to have stayed up all night and everything comes together. And I was like, oh my God, this is annoying. I hated the sound of my own voice. First, everything. So all I left in was for it to, so I am basically DJing, like introducing the different radio stations. And then also there are sounds for the time of day you might be listening to it. That's it.
Got it. So, and then the sounds between your DJing or between your announcing, the music that's playing, that is all generated in Suno, I think you mentioned. So you were manually speaking to create the announcements in between. Then you generated the music in Suno to play. Yeah. And that's all, there must be a library of music that you've built for this. How many songs and styles, and how long was that process? That must have in itself taken forever.
So that was like, that's the 2 months part of this. The actual build took me, when I say build, adding the music, building the radio, building all the worlds was 4 days intensive. But the music part took the longest, where I had to go source. I wanted to understand what I was creating. So it's not just telling Suno to create. No, it needed to be meaningful. It needed to really, I could hear when something was off when I just prompted Suno. And so that took 2 months to do. So I had like a huge Notion file where I was like, okay, here is the name of the original song that was the inspiration, the artist. Here are all the different beats that I've listened to and identified the different instruments from them. And then here is my attempt at rebuilding a prompt, not to recreate their music. So that's the thing that I have to be very clear about. None of this music recreates their music, because then I was tweaking all the prompts in a way to ensure it's not one-to-one with their sounds, but it is creating something new that is sort of reminiscent of the time that they created those music. And the different eras, like the 50s, 60s, 70s, all the way to the early 2000s was like so there are about 63 of them. And just to give anyone who is interested, so it's like Bar Beach Blues, what I mixed together. I did mix them across eras. So it's not just like one is for one particular era, but Bar Beach Blues are like the slower, jazzier kind of, yeah. So if you're feeling very smooth jazz, velvety sounds, go to Bar Beach Blues. Lagos Soul is more like your calypso, your soul music. There's a bit of reggaeton there as well. And then Owambe FM. Now, Owambe is Nigerian, it's a term, it's a Yoruba term for like there's something going on there, basically, which we use as a term for parties. And do you know how big Nigerian parties get? So that music is more inspired by that concept of just people coming together. So you'll hear like there's a couple of music that are based on Nigerian independence around the 60s, where I just try to imagine like people really just joyful in the streets, and what the clubs looked like sounded like at night in the 60s. So you will find this kind of music in Owambe FM. And if you just want to let anything and everything play, just go to the final one, the full spectrum. Just go all 63, and it mixes and matches across all 63 of them. And all the music is hosted in Vercel, basically. So yeah.
Wow, what a project. Love it. It's amazing. If you have not checked it out yet, please do. We'll put a link in the show notes. But it's a really fantastic and inspiring project about what you can, the level of detail you can accomplish with a very specific vision in mind for what that could be. So I think it's a great example of not just what AI is capable of building, but having AI in service of a specific vision that you have for something, and really bringing that to life through the power of using AI to build things. So love the work. Well done.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you.
I know we're running out of time quickly, but I did have a few quick fire questions I wanted to ask you to maybe wrap up, and we could stop there. And these are, I'll ask you a small handful, just short answers. Nothing particularly long is required, but curious if you have any initial reactions or thoughts to this. So first one, so when AGI takes over everything and we don't have to work anymore, what will you do with all your free time?
Paint. That's it. I would just paint. My house is very famously decorated with my PCs across the board. Well, a few of them that are not mine as well, but yeah, I've got my PCs proudly displayed across every room in this house. My one ritual every year is I watch the entire Transformers series back to back, and just like take time to illustrate that entire week. And just I try to do that like once a year as a practice, but I've missed that so much that with AI, I'm spending time creating more and coding. And I really would, AGI, thank you. If you do come, I'd be painting. Thank you so much.
Amazing. The world needs more of your paintings. What's the last tool you deleted from your stack, and why?
That's a spicy one. Whisperflow.
Why?
This is a very, very, if anyone works there, and let's have a chat. Okay. Whisperflow, for some reason, had this banner where they were claiming that it would pick up any accent and it could handle almost any intonation. And you could also change the language. So speak your language to it. And we're like, wow, that's a bold thing. So I remember downloading Whisperflow and switching to Yoruba, and I wanted to talk to it, and it was obviously a fail. But that was not why I deleted it. I just laughed and brushed that off. What began to really grate my nerves was seeing all the misspellings of the things that I would say. And it's like, if you're claiming you understand any accent, of which I don't even feel as though my accent is hard to parse, right? Infuriating and very gaslighting for me. So yeah, I know plenty of people have had good luck with it, which is great. But I think for me, it's more like once you start to say that you understand languages outside of English, please be prepared to back it up. I think that's where I got irritated.
Totally makes sense. Is there an alternative that you use now that you're much more of a fan of, or?
Monologue by every AI. That is my go-to. Yeah. Monologue has been quite standard. I do not expect that. I think the point is they did not create any expectations where they just like, this is a great tool. All right, we'll try it. And it's been a great tool. It does pick up most of the things I say there. Obviously, once I speak to like speaking with saying Yoruba names or saying any names are not English, it might be harder. But yeah, in general, I'm fine with it. Monologue is so much better in terms of picking up my accent. Makes less mistakes.
So it's a better product experience and it's better at setting expectations that are realistic. Perfect.
Exactly.
Last question for you. You've been incredibly inventive. You build a lot of stuff outside of your day job. What is the silliest thing you've prototyped purely because you could?
Okay. Gosh. I created a spinner for dinner for meals. Right.
Okay.
So you recall how I said I don't have a problem cooking. I've been cooking since I was 6. I deeply hate the process of, hey, what do we want for dinner tonight? And everyone goes, I don't know. And the loads comes right back to me to figure out what we're all gonna eat. So it's almost like the minute it's 5:30, my brain starts to go, oh, what are we gonna do? And I've tried so many things. I created hand roots and illustrated a nice dinner plan for like 2 weeks. But for some reason, thank you, ADHD, I'm unable to follow those plans. So no matter how pretty I make them and no matter how much I put them in the fridge, because I was like, oh, I don't want to eat that today. And so I created a spinach just because I could. Where it's like, all right, it's preloaded with a bunch of like Nigerian meals. I just spin to dry. What are we going to do tonight? And also my daughter's like, hey, come, pick what you want, do the spin, and let me know what comes up with. And yeah, it was just something silly, but it's been fun, and also just like offloading the mental load of having to think through what dinner options are every day.
Great. And do you use it every day?
Nope. ADHD peak. I use it on a lot of days, but I think it also depends on my schedule. Like there are periods where I obviously having no space to think. Yes, it's very helpful on those days. Many times it's a bit more relaxing. So I can just like, all right, here is what we're gonna do for dinner. I start to think about it from 10 a.m. I'll have figured it out by 5. What dinner will be.
Well, I love the idea of the spinner. Sounds very cool and very silly.
Yeah.
But mostly useful. So well done.
Yeah. How about you?
What was the silliest thing I prototyped? I have prototyped very unfunctional calculators with my son. Calculators that maybe start off as a calculator and then they turn into adding a car button or a horse button or do ridiculous things. So yeah, feels quite silly.
Okay.
Definitely not useful as a calculator, but
I love
good for
that.
teaching some exploration and play maybe.
I know, absolutely. Yeah, my daughter's summer goal is learning cursor. So we're setting her up with her accounts and we're going to see all the silly things that she's going to create.
Oh, amazing. That sounds super fun. Let's wrap up there. Thank you so much for your time, Ini.
Perfect.
Fascinating to
Thank you
learn
so
more
much.
about you, your work, your process, and your side projects, which I think there's so much stuff we covered there. And just to see the joy on your face. If you're listening to this but not actually watching it, your face has really been lit up for the last 20 minutes or so talking about the side projects. And that's clearly where you get a lot of energy, and it's amazing to see that work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It fills me with joy to just be able to know that, all right, work's done for the day. I've got something I can pick up and tinker with till I go to bed. So yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
See you
Okay,
again.
let's wrap up there. Thank you so much for your time, Ini, and thanks for listening.